Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we are diving into what is honestly the most bizarre, complex, and just brilliant biological puzzle evolution has ever solved: how species actually survive. You know the drill. Animal reproduction isn't just about making babies. We're talking about wild adaptations and incredibly specialized strategies that are all laser-focused on one single goal: winning the ultimate reproductive game. Before we get too deep into the weeds, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover sexual versus asexual reproduction, some creative mating solutions, internal and external fertilization, protecting the next generation, reproductive systems and cycles, and finally, understanding contraceptive methods.
All right, Section 1, sexual versus asexual reproduction.
So, here is a massive evolutionary question for you. Think about it. Why on earth would any creature go through the absolute hassle of finding a mate, fighting off rivals, and risking getting eaten in the process when they could just clone themselves? I mean, staying put and hitting copy seems way easier, right? Well, biology always has a trick up its sleeve. Mechanically speaking, there is a night and day difference here. Asexual reproduction is basically a solo act. We're talking processes like fission, where a parent just splits into two individuals, or budding, entirely skipping the need for gametes. Sexual reproduction, though, that strictly requires the fusion of a male gamete, the sperm, and a female gamete, the egg. So mechanically, asexual is just way simpler. But let's talk about the number 2 for a second. In evolutionary biology, this represents a massive hurdle called the twofold cost of sexual reproduction. Basically, because it takes two parents to make offspring, sexual females produce half as many daughters as asexual females. If you're an asexual organism, literally every single one of your offspring can go on to reproduce on their own. But if you reproduce sexually, only half of your offspring, the females, can bear young. So from a pure number standpoint, going the sexual route starts you off at a massive 50% deficit. And yet, despite that steep twofold cost, almost every single eukaryotic species on the planet reproduces sexually. Why pay the price? Because the evolutionary payoff is absolutely huge. Sexual reproduction brings genetic recombination to the table. It basically shuffles the genetic deck, which dramatically increases variation in the offspring. So if the environment suddenly goes haywire, a diverse population has a much better shot at surviving than a bunch of identical clones. It speeds up adaptation and physically roots out harmful genetic mutations. That variation is the ultimate key to long-term survival. Moving right along to Section 2. Creative mating solutions. So, what happens when finding a mate to get that crucial genetic variation is practically impossible? Nature gets creative. Take hermaphroditism, which is a brilliant workaround for organisms that are super isolated. Instead of roaming the vast ocean floor just hoping to bump into a potential mate, these guys are equipped with both male and female reproductive systems. Any two individuals that cross paths can mate, and in some species, if they are completely alone, they can even self-fertilize. It's basically the ultimate biological backup plan. But it gets even wilder. Enter the asexual whiptail lizards. They reproduce entirely through parthenogenesis, meaning virgin births. No sperm required at all. But here is the fascinating part. They evolved from a sexual species, and the females actually still act out male-like mating behaviors to stimulate ovulation in each other. It's literally evolutionary role play to keep the reproductive gears turning, even though there are zero males in their species. Absolutely mind-blowing. And this whole routine is entirely driven by hormones, exactly like their sexual ancestors. When estradiol levels peak and the ovary is growing, the lizard acts like a typical female. But right after ovulation, when progesterone spikes, that exact same female suddenly flips the script. She starts showing male-like mating behaviors and actually mounts other females. It is a perfectly synchronized hormonal dance that ensures the cycle keeps going. No males needed. Which brings us to Section 3, internal and external fertilization. All right, so we've covered finding a mate, or bypassing that entirely, but how do the sperm and egg actually meet? Basically, it comes down to a numbers game versus a behavioral game. External fertilization is the numbers game. Females release massive clouds of eggs into a moist environment, males release sperm over them, and they just hope for the best. It takes incredible timing. Internal fertilization, on the other hand, happens inside or right near the female's reproductive tract. It requires way fewer gametes, but the trade-off is that it heavily relies on complex courtship behaviors and compatible anatomy.
When you compare amphibians and insects, the contrast is wild. Amphibians are external fertilizers. They release thousands of eggs into the water, just crossing their fingers that a few survive predators and the harsh environment. But then you have insects that use internal fertilization. Because they produce significantly fewer gametes, they have to invest heavily in protecting those specific eggs to ensure they survive.
Let's explore that further in Section 4, Protecting the Next Generation. The harsh reality of nature is that most species produce way more offspring than their environment can actually support, meaning survival rates are brutal. So if you're not just playing the numbers game, parental care is an absolute must. Just picture a giant water bug. It literally carries its internally fertilized eggs around on its back like a biological backpack, just to make sure they have a safe, highly oxygenated environment until they hatch. And beyond just carrying eggs, terrestrial animals have evolved some incredible physiological strategies to protect their young. They developed amniote eggs, those thick, protective, calcium-based layers that keep embryos from drying out on land. Other animals take it a step further by actually keeping the embryo inside the female's body for development and then following up with intense parental care after birth to get them through those super dangerous early days. Section 5. Reproductive Systems and Cycles. Obviously, pulling off internal fertilization and intense embryo protection requires some highly specialized internal plumbing. Take insects, for example. Many female insects have a specialized organ called a spermatotheca. It's basically a sperm bank. She can safely store sperm during copulation, keep it perfectly alive and viable, and then release it to fertilize her eggs way later, waiting until the exact moment environmental conditions are perfect for her babies to survive. Over in mammals, these complex systems are run by super precise hormonal cycles, like the estrus cycle. Now, unlike the human menstrual cycle, mammals on an estrus cycle actually reabsorb the endometrium back into the uterus if they don't get pregnant. Plus, their sexual receptivity is strictly locked down to a specific heat period. The timing varies wildly from species to species, but it perfectly syncs up the animal's mating behavior with the exact window her body is physically ready to bear young. Finally, Section 6. Understanding contraceptive methods. When you understand the sheer mechanics of these biological systems, you see how humans have developed ways to actually intervene in our own reproductive cycles. Generally, human contraceptives try to block the union of those gametes, but with pretty varied success. The rhythm method, which is all about timing things around natural ovulation, still has a 10 to 20% pregnancy rate. Coitus interruptus, or withdrawal, famously unreliable. But physical barrier methods, like condoms that actually block sperm from entering the tract, drop that pregnancy rate down to less than 10%. It's really just applying basic biology to manage fertilization. So I'll leave you with this thought today. We've just looked at asexual cloning, hormonal role-playing in lizards, specialized sperm banks, and intense evolutionary parental care. Knowing the absolute extremes evolution has gone to in order to ensure survival, how unique are we humans, really, in this grand biological game? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep questioning this wild world around us.